Hello, welcome to Middle East in Depth. The Guardian's defense and intelligence correspondent Ewen MacAskill writes an article arguing the security service in Britain will need to explain harassment claims and how the man behind ISIS beheadings slipped through the network. Britain's security services are in a no-win situation, monitor a suspected terrorist, and as in the case of Mohammed Emwazi, MI5 ends up accused of harassment, failing to monitor him, also known as Jihadi John, and being blamed for letting him escape abroad to commit murder. The writer says MI5, like the FBI, has known since at least September that Emwazi is Jihadi John, but has not gone public. To some extent, the reticence is legal. There is a police investigation in both countries into the beheadings of US and British hostages allegedly by Emwazi. Another reason is operational, a fear that releasing the name might provoke a negative reaction from Emwazi or one of his Islamic State colleagues, given they are still holding Western hostages. And another reason is concern about the risk to Emwazi's family in the UK and fears of violence against them. The US National Security Council, like its British counterparts, refused on Thursday to publicly confirm that Emwazi is Jihadi John, saying it would not comment on ongoing investigations, even though his name had been published in the Washington Post. The silence left a vacuum for the prisoners' group Cage to fill, accusing MI5 of putting pressure on a man who had been innocent, harassing him to become an informer, and in the end, radicalizing him. Cage drew a parallel with Michael Abedolajo, jailed for the murder of Fusilia Lee Rigby, and claimed he too had been harassed under pressure to become an informer and in turn radicalized. However, that does not mean the security services are not facing some serious questions. There needs to be an answer to Emwazi's claim that a British counter-terrorist official, the agency, was not identified and tried to strangle him. Ewen MacAskill questions: the UK blocked Emwazi from going to Kuwait in 2010, but he evaded the authorities in 2012, ending up in Syria. Why were officials unable to prevent him leaving TK for Syria? And now we are joined by British political commentator William Spring. Thank you very much for being on the show.
Thank you.
Mr. Spring, the UK blocked Emwazi from going to Kuwait in 2010, but he evaded the authorities in 2012, ending up in Syria. Now, why were officials unable to prevent him from doing so?
I think they were quite able to prevent him going to anywhere if they had prioritized him enough. The problem is that with so many jihadis floating around, there isn't the manpower to do proper surveillance of these guys. I believe to do effective surveillance of one jihadi takes about 50 operatives, and this is the reason. I mean, with a mass introduction of jihadis going off to Syria, as encouraged by the UK government at the beginning, because if you remember,
would you assert so, Mr. Spring?
Sorry?
Why would you so assert?
Why would I say that? Sorry. Regarding at the beginning of the Syrian conflict, the British government was supporting the so-called jihadis that were in place in Syria and against Assad.
Yes.
Quite why they did that, I have no idea. That was a totally deluded policy which made the British government complicit in the various war crimes committed by the jihadis in Syria. Now, it was easy, I think, for jihadis in England to misread the message from Britain, from London. They were thinking, oh, these guys, Assad and his company are so bad, the British are against them, therefore if we fight against Assad, we're on the same side as the British. And later, of course, British policy changed, and the British realized that it wasn't a good idea necessarily to back the rebels against Assad. And but there is the old Chinese proverb: once you ride a tiger, it's difficult to get off. And once the British were compromised, and the French,
yes,
and the Americans, by alliance with these very unsavory elements in Syria, who were going around torturing people and killing people and generally making life miserable for the average Syrian, it was very difficult for the British to then disentangle themselves from this. In fact, it's become impossible because a few weeks ago, for example, the American government made a deal with Turkey whereby jihadis will be trained in Saudi Arabia with the confirmation blessing of the White House and Turkey. And these are the same people under a different name.
Yes.
In one case, the British and Americans are saying, "Oh, these are very bad guys. We mustn't support them. We must apprehend them." And in the other case, the British and the Americans are saying, "No, we must train them. We must train them in Jordan or in Saudi Arabia." Whatever training they get in Saudi Arabia, I don't know what it would be. Would it be how to crucify Christians? Would that be the training that the Americans give to their surrogates in Saudi Arabia? I mean, what I'm saying is the Americans and the British are in line with, allied to these terrorist groups.
Yes, and what is in your for a long time. Yes, Mr. Spring, what is in your opinion when it comes to Jihadi John? The Britain's security apparatus, what do they have to clarify most on this occasion?
Well, frankly, I don't think they need to clarify anything. I think it's evident that the reason Jihadi John was not apprehended was there was no real will on the part of the British government to stop jihadis going to the Middle East to fight and against Assad. If there had been that will, if there had been that desire, they would have stopped them, undoubtedly. But at that time, when all this was sort of being developed, Assad was the bogeyman, and that is David Cameron and his corrupt, aggressive, violent war criminal cabinet want to bring down.
We respect your opinion, of course. British.
They didn't stop Jihadi John.
Yes,
because they didn't want to.
British political commentator William Spring spoke to us despite your circumstances today. Our condolences again for the decease of your brother. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you.
Carl.
For more updates, please visit levant.tv or subscribe to Middle East in Depth on iTunes. Thanks for watching and bye for now.